the music queued up. All right. New song coming up. It's from my homeboy, Jimmy Zilla. So check it out. Not EDM, but That was the end of that is just utterly ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. The video for that's coming soon. All right, so today's beans and greens. We'll be discussing more movies. The conspiracy topic where we're talking about how sort of movies there's a pattern in these movies that you see that actually play out in real life and in real society. So that's basically what we're going today. So, but just to before we get started, I know I'm drinking on. Got me a little Nescafe. That's my standard. Wow. Anyway, that's my standard. But I definitely want to try some different on here. So I'm looking into like different coffees and stuff like that, and we're gonna see. So Nescafe. Now, what's mad crazy right now is the actual herbals. Like I'm gonna put up a picture, but ridiculous. It's ridiculously strong. What I have is the strain is called Waterfall. I eventually, maybe next cast, I will go ahead and I'll put up a picture of it. But holy shit, you can't abuse it as much as you want. You should put you like not even put you down because it's straight indica. No. I'm sorry. Not indica, but why am I blinking? Let's see. Sativa. I don't know why I didn't remember that. Let's go even from the beginning. Because what's the first thing when you get a bag is you smell it, right? So don't open it because you don't have to. You smell it through the bag. And it's the real heavy, danky smell. Love that shit. Always love that shit. Like the old, there was this real old, danky, like, back in the day when you get like, it always seems to be the sativas that's really super, super danky. But you get the real pungent, heavy smell all the way through the bag, number one. Like, I got my incense burning right now. I gotta have it burning because I know everybody in this place is just this heavy, pungent smell. Then when you smoke it, it's like, whoa. You know what I mean? You're just up and it's like, I don't know. It's like weed crack. For real. I mean, they used to have this shit called green crack. This shit got you, bro. Niggas got me. I smoked like 2 J's before. So I'm trying to like smoke one, during this, but shit. I'm zooted. Yo, you can't abuse it. Because I'm pretty much doing that right now. I should have just smoked one while I was broadcasting because way too high. And I got to go out in public later. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to put up a picture. It's some crazy looking. It's like, it looks raggedy kind of on first glance, but when you get like up close look, shit. All right. So, back to the matter that sort of lead to. I mean, like I said, it shows you a blueprint of where the world is going, and it's basically they're telling you what's happening with movies, right? So, in this instance, and for me, it's going to be just more than just movies. It's going to be media, because in this instance, I have a few different things pieces I'm bringing up. It's gonna be 3 movies, 1 TV show, a video game, and there's gonna be a couple of honorable mentions in the back end that I'll go over. So now what we're seeing playing out right now is the sort of thing that's going on with Venezuela, right? Where there's supposed to be a lot of drugs coming out of Venezuela, which I don't doubt from that that neck of the world, really, neck of the woods, from that area in the world. Yeah, we're definitely getting some drugs out there, but I don't know necessarily that the people they've gone after so far were actually drug runners, right? But we do know that this is something that with see what they've done with the whole drug war and drug there's a couple things, a couple layers to that, because of course one, you have importation. Well, you actually have cultivation, importation, and then you have to have the distribution. Now, customers, that's easy, right? I mean, even if they didn't have movies and things like that, you always had somebody that had something that would just, sort of like a word of mouth peer pressure type of a deal, right? You have this now. You have this product that, okay, so you've created it, and the product, you get repeat customers. That's never gonna change. Now you have to get this stuff into the country, and really just import it and all over the world. So here comes a couple of things. One, who controls that importation? Who controls the money? And who ultimately profits from, right? And now the next layer to that is based off of the fact that these drugs themselves are illegal, and it creates a black market, and you have both sellers and users, lower level dealers and users. Based off of that, you can now create industry from that, because you have your prison industry, you have you have obviously law enforcement on many different levels, from street level cops to DEA, which is federal, right? And even have other industries such as you have to provide food to these prisons, right? You have to have guards to control the inmates in these prisons. You have to have people that build these prisons. So that's one of the many layers, right? Then there's also the impact of from when you are now the user, because this again sparks other industries, because now being the user, you've gone through going to jail. That's just a given, right? Or seller. Now there's industry that comes from that, because now you have probation officers, you have besides probation officers, just there's a whole industry around that, and then all of that has to be controlled, right? Has to be run, and it's profitable on every level. It's profitable on every level, but that who controls it is who's most profitable, right? Now, throughout these movies that I'm going to mention, throughout even the video game, and the spoiler alert, because the game that I'm going to mention is everybody's seen it, but there is a campaign to this. Obviously, anybody that's into video games listen to this will know what I'm talking about. But so there are just different levels to this, right? Let me get and that will be abundantly clear once I bring up these pictures and start going into a little bit more. But let me see. All right, so the last one. All right, so the first movie I'm going to start with, it's really wild because of the name, right? It's called American Made. Now this gets to the distribution part of this drug trade, right? Literally biographical. I mean, it's probably some license to it that they, how the movies studios they add things and take things away. So to make the movie more, I guess, palatable, right? So distribution. Pilot, TWA pilot, and TWA is a now defunct airline. So, he starts. They hire, and through certain circumstances, you watch the movie. He starts running, and then, when I look at the actual synopsis, right? Let me bring it up. Okay, so yeah. No, Tom Cruise again plays this Barry Seal. Now, he was, like I said, a TWA pilot, and there's a certain three-letter group that is going to be central to all of what I'm talking about. This three-letter group, they basically they recruited Barry Seal to run reconnaissance missions, and this is in Colombia and it's all of Central America. Somehow, he started trafficking large quantities of coke. And so now, what I mentioned before is somebody has to control this, right? So based on the fact that they have these large, I don't know if he necessarily was the birth of it, but who was controlling, at least as far as in that area, was cartel, Medellin cartel. And he's starts transporting all this coke into the country. And I think eventually he did get murdered, but it was like if you look at that movie, it goes through like this whole big ride, from just being a pilot, then being recruited, then now he's on regular missions, actually bringing in the coke. I think they even referred to him as like sort of like a crazy white boy type of deal. But one of the things that we find out in hindsight is that this three-letter group is behind. Not sure if they're necessarily behind actually creating the product itself, but he was definitely behind transporting it. They were definitely transporting it in. Now, one of the things that happens is this stuff is profitable. So why else do it? Layers to that as well. Now, there are even larger implications because in Contra, it was an Iran Contra sort of that was the conflict that was going on, AA, which is that three-letter group that I'm sort of mentioning, which is central through all those. They were trying to get up money to get weapons in order, I believe it was to fight Iran. And how they were funding it was through the sales of drugs. And a lot of this stuff was being done behind, at least allegedly, behind the president's back. And because of all that, there was a whole big to-do in that time because of the fact that what they were doing and who they were aligning themselves with in order to be able to get this money, to be able to get these weapons. And again, how does that fit today? Because one of the that's been in the news for a better part of the last 2 years. Hell, better part of the last, as far as I'm concerned, all I've been alive, 48 years. Because this stuff happened in the 80s. So now we're talking about the aspect of importation, right? Now we're going to go to the next movie. And the next movie gets to the next layer. All right, so the next movie, I'm going to find a better way to do this a little bit more smoothly, but for now, this is how I have to do it. Okay, so the next movie is Kill the Messenger. Now, there were a couple implications here. And this movie actually leads into the TV show that I'm going to talk about as well. But this is an extension of the last movie. Because in Kill the Messenger, what happens here is this guy's a reporter. And I believe he was doing a news report on a drug dealer. I think something along the lines of where he was having his stuff confiscated. And either way, and this is something you have to watch the movie. I don't want to go definitely because I don't want to go into it too in depth because you definitely have to watch it. I didn't rewatch because I didn't really. I mean, I watched it a couple times actually, but I don't want it. The exact every little detail is not what's important. It's the stuff that's going on in the periphery. But one of the reports that he was doing led him to a report of this guy. I think his name was Danilo Gallinari, right? He's bringing in tons and tons and tons. Comes out through his reporting that this guy, and I believe he was Colombian. It turns out that he happened to be bringing in this coke, and it was a certain 3-letter organization. Let's just say they were turning a blind eye to it. They were profiting from this, but here's the thing about court. He was at a court hearing for this one of these Colombian. I think it was like I mean, I guess it's easy to say drug lord, but he was a higher up Colombian, and through discovery, he found out information with these other Colombians that were bringing in the coke, and that it was through the behest or the blessing of this 3-letter organization. Through his discovery, of course he found it out, but then also what he's finding out, where these drugs went. And then we have the character come into play. The character that comes into play Now, the thing about this particular character, his name was taken and used by a rapper. So, of course, receiving tons and tons and tons and tons of coke from this Colombian. And through the fact that all the discovery from, and the guy's name, let me give the guy's name. Yes. Okay, so the reporter, now his name is Gary Webb. Through his reporting, and actually because he put this information in an actual newspaper, and the newspaper got national attention because he was able to connect the delivery of of this coke to Rick Ross, because he was actually talking to Rick Ross while he was in jail, and that he connected the fact that this operation that was being run by the CIA to fund the Iran Contra situation. Now, goes back to the last movie, because Barry Seal was, Barry Seal was basically the guy running, one of the more infamous guys running the coke for that operation. So there was a connection. Now, the thing was, all the information had to come out because of discovery through court, and with that national attention, it basically put a bullseye on him, because at the end, just like with Barry Seal, pop, he was in bath and he was in the bathtub, at least in the movie. I'm not sure if that actually happened in real life. I think it might have been in his car in real life, but he shot himself twice in the head. He just pop. I didn't do a good enough job. Pop again. But what comes out in this movie is these organizations had to admit, they had to admit that this stuff was true. And one of the things that comes up is that, again, this stuff, who was the customers? How was you going to distribute it, right? Low-level distributors, distributed through the hood, and one of the main guys. And what happens with rappers a lot was they were taking the monikers of all these crime figures. So of course you have this guy, who was a prison guard. He was supposed to be guarding people that were involved in this type of lifestyle, especially coming in, living in Miami. He took on the name. So that name Rick Ross is going to come up again in a little bit, because, and not the rapper, but the real Rick Ross, because of that, everything is sort of intertwined, right? So now the next movie is going to take a little bit of a different turn. Now this one, it was it wasn't that great of a movie for the guys that are in the movie, but the premise behind it is what's important. And if you think about it, it's really scary. So, name of the movie is Two Guns. Now, the significance of this movie, it's obviously not dealing with the drug trade specifically, around that Iran Contra, but there's something important that's going to be central through this whole theme, again, through that organization. Now, each one of these guys was some sort of like different type of law enforcement, right? And Denzel they're having a run in with Mark Wahlberg in the movie. It was sort of like basically a pissing match. Now what happens is Mark Wahlberg, whatever his character's name is, and it's not important to be honest, but the premise behind it is what's important. But he robs money from a drug dealer, cartel. And Denzel finds out about it. One of the things that comes out through the cartel leader, as he's talking and telling what's going on, he's letting them know that, hey, and it comes out that, hey, I may be the cartel leader, but I am not the guy. See, there's this song on the Belly soundtrack, right? The movie Belly. But it's a line in one of these songs. I forgot who the rapper was, but he goes, I want to be the guy who supplies you. Meaning, there is nobody above. So, the cartel leader played by Edward James Olmos in this movie, he's going after this guy trying to get that money back. But because it's not his money, the big bad in this movie was a CIA operative. And he was even more treacherous than even the cartel leader. And he had the cartel leader scared if hands or butts. But again, going back to what I was saying about the original movie, which was American Made. The thing about this, it's just all of those movies have one central player, right? And like I said originally, we're talking about distribution and essentially who profits from it. And each movie that I've talked about so far, they've been that one central player. The next bit of information or what I wanted, or the next actual domino, or the next piece of media is actually a television show. And it goes back to the original, or it goes back to Killer Messenger. Because remember, I was talking about Rick Ross. Now, as Rick Ross is in prison, he's negotiating to be able to tell a story. They didn't want him involved they didn't want him to profit from it in any way, shape, or form. So, what they did, they created this TV show called Snowfall. Now, Snowfall was basically in his take dramatic license, but it was his story. How he got the drugs, and how he expanded his empire, and because it was basically an empire. If you think about it, he was getting these drugs super cheap, and it was so much, and he had the formula to make crack. Now, the thing with this is something that has affected all of us, But we see where it comes from, how it was brought in, and then through that TV show, you get an idea of how it spread, and yeah, it's pretty wild, but it doesn't really stop. Really, it doesn't really stop right there. Obviously, other types of drugs. There's other types of different people that were able to bring it in, but these are big ones. And these four movies, well, three movies and the four TV shows, they're so interconnected, and you see a pattern, and how it fits in today's world is because you see the effect, socially as well as economically, and how these different things that were going on in these different movies, what they led up to in society now. With Venezuela, just coming up, and you understand that the whole premise that they're bringing in drugs, and that there is a war on drugs, allows for them to use that. You have this enemy, and we galvanize all of society around going after this enemy, and through that, you can not only monetize the fear, and the mood around going after this particular enemy, whether it's, you know, terrorism or drugs, not just the actual events themselves, the terrorist events and the actual drug dealings, but just the thought of it, the threat of these things. You can use that energy, right? And they basically do. And now that leads me to the last bit of media, which is actually a video game. Now it's the spoilers. The video game I'm talking about is Battlefield 6. Now, in this video game, you have the Americans, and they're getting ready to give up their basically they're on this base, and they have all this information, and they want to save, and they're getting ready to leave this base, and they're going to just leave this country. But the bad guys, which is called the Pax Armada, they attack the base, and now there's a big war going on between America and the Pax Armada. Now, in the background, you see these particular soldiers, right? They break into this house of what turns out to be like a CIA like operative, and throughout the different battles and the different conversations they're having with this operative, it turns out that this Pax Armada group was created by said three-letter group, which she worked for, in order to use that the energy behind this war, the energy behind the conflicts. They're able to run. Society's able to run. What I mean is, again, with the fear and with the threat of war, you create industry, you create social cohesion, and there's a central enemy, and that enemy is ultimately a boogeyman that society is now pointed at. And around it, like I said, all these different things happen. Like I said, social change, industries built, and that whole energy, and that's ultimately at the end of the day, besides control, it's also monetization of that energy, and it's that one singular group. Now, as a side, the whole drug war, and especially when it comes to like crack and things like that, is something that has affected me completely my whole life, and I've seen things up close. Oh boy, I've seen some things up close. And this is going from living in Brooklyn to moving all the way down to Ocala, then to Tampa. So I've been totally affected by it, and there's one in particular movie that gets a mention to a different degree, Godfather. Now we all know, there was this is a very very popular movie, but one of the themes in The Godfather is the other Dons want to sell drugs. Don Corleone doesn't want to sell drugs because of all the bad effects from selling that. And at that time the government wasn't overlooking it. At that time it brought more problems than it did, at least to his mind. So they try to obviously we know they try to kill him. He recovers and he has a big meeting with the bosses, right? And the part that the premise or the actual synopsis of the movie is important. What's important is one of the things that was told to Don Corleone as a condition of him allowing, because it comes out in the movie that he was the head Don, and he had control of courts, he had control of newspapers, so he had power to be able to them to be into the drug trade without it affecting them as much as would be if they didn't have control of these different entities. One of the things that the boss said is that they're going to bring in drugs, and it's not going to affect their community. They're going to do is they're going to funnel it into the black community, and he basically called us animals. The Italians controlled neighborhoods like Harlem, and they were big time into these are Italian gangsters. And now this is a movie, but this shit happened in real life. I seen it with my own two fucking eyes. They did just that. So anybody tells me that movies they're just entertainment. No, it's not just entertainment. They're telling you what's going on and what they're going to do. And sure as shit, at least back in the 60s and 70s, it was heroin. And then as you go along, and now it's coke. And then coke to crack. And essentially, what they did was use, drug dealers, black drug dealers, to spread that shit to these areas. That brings me to the next movie. It's a movie that Denzel played in. Right? Now, in this movie, the drug dealer in question, he was bringing in heroin, but he was in the movie, for at least as far as we know, he was using the military to bring it in. Now the movie's called American Gangsters with Denzel, and he had to partner up with Italians. So I'm not too sure. I mean, the premise of the movie, at least the movie says that he did it independently. I don't know, but again, there's that common thread, because one, of course, we have the mafia now involved, but the common thread is those drugs are now being put into the black community specifically. Now I can go over what the reason was. I mean, you can look at the results of our communities now, and you see. I don't really need to go over that. You see the results. But that common theme, or the end result of each movie, and the end result of all the different media, is this was something that was imposed upon our country in order for control, to make money. And of course, like I said, it's the big bad. And I don't know, man. I just seen the effects straight up. I mean, right in my own two eyes. I mean, it's devastating. It's devastating. But just keep watching the movies. You know what's happening. All right. So I'm done with the discussion. I took you through a few different movies. There's about 5 movies, TV show, and a video game. That'll tell you the drug. That'll tell you the history of the drug war and culture. All in a nutshell. Now there are other movies that could go through that at least show you supposed fun times, and they're not. Trust me, they're not. But that'll be for another discussion. Day's hot. If you got some pot, I'm out.